Okay, so I'm in my general workspace. What we did prior was to take a pinwheel and rig it. Now what we're going to do is we're going to create a ball and we're going to be able to animate that ball. We're only going to animate that or make it animatable from the profile view. We'll get into Z space a little later on, but what I want to be able to do is just be able to have this move in the Y axis and also the X axis. Um, so first thing we're going to do is that we are going to create a polygon sphere. And that sphere I'm going to rotate in Z by 90. So I just went over to rotate, change that to 90. Excuse me. I'm also going to rename this. Pardon me. I'm also going to rename this to ball. If you have objects in your scene, you should use that as a habit to get into is to create your objects and then name those objects so that you know what they are. Okay, so I have my ball. I'm going to then also create a NURBS circle, and you can see it's the same size as my sphere. So I'm going to scale that by 2. So I just left mouse clicked and drag down and press 2. So now we have the size correct. We are also going to rotate this by 90. And we are going to, we're going to select both of these. And what I want to do is I don't want to have these rotated 90. I mean, I don't want them to recognize that they've been rotated by 90. I want to set this new position as its default position. And the way that we can do that is that if you're in the polygon modeling tab, over here, there's a little snowflake with 000 on it. If you click on that, that will freeze the transformations here, meaning that it will now, if I rotate this or move it, if I move it out this way and maybe rotate it around, if I go in here and I set all of this to 0 now, it will go back to that default position. Okay, that's freezing the transformations. The other place that you can also find this is if you hold spacebar, go to modify, and then freeze transformations. That will do the same thing. So that button is the same. Okay, so we froze the transformations. Now what I want to do is I want to have a second circle in here. So I'm going to select my circle. I'm going to do a Control D to duplicate it. And then I'm going to scale this by 2. So we're going to have this twice as big. So we have our circle in there. And again, I'm going to freeze the transformations on this. So this goes back to 1. Now, if ever you're, you might run into the problem if you're new to working in Maya, is that you're like, okay, I want to, move this stuff and I want to, say maybe I moved it and I rotated it and maybe scaled it a little bit. And I'm like, okay, well, I want to make sure to get all of this back to the center. And I select all of these and I press 0. And then all of a sudden my thing is gone. Okay. Your object is not gone. You can see that we have the circle that we're going to need to rename, but you can see that circle is still in the scene. If you can see it in the scene, it's still there. And what the problem is that you have scaled this to 0. Now, anything that is a scale of 0 is going to be, just basically a point. So what you need to do is just to click on the scales, set those to 1. Those need to be that size, and your object will then come back. Okay. All right, so those have been checked on this inner circle. We're going to go back to the inner circle. And I'm going to right mouse click and hold on this inner circle. And I'm going to go and select control vertices. So these are the vertices for my circle. These are what's basically helping to create the shape of this circle. You might have saw that I switched my background. I just hit Alt and then B, and you can cycle through the different backgrounds here. I figured this would be easier to see. So then I'm going to select the vertices at the 10 o'clock at 2 o'clock, at the 4, and then 8. So I'm just holding shift while I'm selecting um, these two and these two, basically like what would draw a box there. All right, and then I'm going to pull those in. So I'm press R. Actually, let me get my things going here. So I pressed R, and then I'm going to scale these in like that. So just kind of pulling this in. So it makes a little shape like that. Now you can change it and make it a star shape or whatever kind of shape you want. Doesn't matter as long as you like it. That's all that matters. Um, and then I'm going to get out of this mode. Now you can get out in two ways. You can either press F8 twice, or if you're in the control mode, you can right mouse click and go to object mode. Either one will get you to the same place. Either F8 twice, tap, tap, or right mouse click and then object mode. All right, then I'm going to rename this. So I want to make sure that this is renamed. So I go up into the name here and I'm going to call this rotate control. Click on that, call that rotate control. I'm going to select my outer shape now. And that outer shape, I'm going to right mouse click and hold and go into my vertices, and I'm going to select the same ones again. So I'm holding shift and selecting these. This time I just clicked and dragged a box around the top two, and then clicked and dragged the box around the bottom two. And those while holding shift. And those got me all of those. Now what I'm going to do is I pressed R to get into scale mode. And this time I'm going to grab the Z, or the blue one here. It's now yellow because I've selected it. If I deselect it, you can see I'm grabbing that blue handle and I'm just pulling it to the center. And that center is going to create this little arrow shape. Now, when we get into squashing and stretching, that squashing and stretching, this point is what's going to help us know which way our ball is squashing and stretching. So we're going to want that point on there. Now, one other thing to notice is that as we scaled this down, it didn't go past 0. Sometimes you may want to scale something and invert it. And to do that, you can double click on the scale tool, which is over here. Double click on that, and it'll open up this window. And that scale tool window, right up here, where is it? Yeah, here, prevent negative scales. If you turn that off, and then we click and drag, now it'll allow you to go beyond 0. So sometimes you want to just completely invert something, and the scale won't allow you to do that. And that is why, is because this prevent negative scale is on. So for right now, we just want to have that on and just go into that diamond shape. Can be helpful, but also can be frustrating if you don't know where to change that. Okay, so I'm going to press W to get out that. I always say when in doubt, press W. To get out of my editing, I could either hit F8 or go into object mode. And we'll just deselect it. We have the rename. So we're going to rename our NURBS. We're going to call this, what are we going to call it? We're going to call this Master Move. Master Move. Okay, so we rename that Master Move. We're going to select everything by dragging a box around it. I'm going to click and drag, select everything. So you can see all three of those things are selected. And I'm just going to make sure that I freeze transformations. I'm also going to delete history. So these are input nodes. Maya is a node-based system. So anytime we do something to our object, it's going to add another node on that. But what we want to do is just kind of start fresh, or say that the point that we're at right now is the fresh point. So we are going to freeze or delete the history. That's this next button over. You click on that, and you can see all of our inputs went away. And that what that means is that it's now this is the object. So generally it doesn't slow Maya down, but if you're doing a lot of modeling, if you get into modeling, and your Maya starts running slow, chances are it's because you have that history on, and you have just a lot of edits in there. It'll keep making nodes. So a nice way to um, get uh, get it so that it's not slowing down is just to save it first, save it at the current position or state that it's in, version it up. Don't just do a control S, do a file save scene as, and then version up your work. Never save over something that's working because Maya, I'll tell you now, will eventually bite you, and then it will give a 0 kilobyte file, and all of your stuff will be erased. So always version up. Okay, so we have our history. All of that stuff is good. All of our it's frozen. History's gone. We're good. All right. Now what we're gonna do is we need to tell the ball. Also, we don't really see the lines on the ball. If we want to do that, we can just click on this button right up here. Oh, 1 second. Okay, so I want to. There we go. That button right there. When we push this button, that is going to allow us to be able to see the edge loops on our ball. That will be helpful. All right, then we are going to we want to constrain the ball to our rotate control. So when this control gets rotated, I want to be able to have the ball actually do the rotating in there with it. Okay. So what we're going to do is we are going to constrain, and constraints are different um, than physical parenting. And I'm just going to take a little sideline here. I'm going to create a polygon. Um, polygon. Let's do a helix. And polygon helix, and we'll also do a create polygon pyramid. Okay, so I'm just going to talk about parenting and parent constraining here a second. So right now I have two objects. I have this helix and pyramid. And so if I wanted to have this this helix be the parent and this pyramid be the child, I could middle mouse click and drag up here. And now this is what I consider to, or what I call like physical parenting. You're physically moving the hierarchy of these two objects. Okay? If I hit Shift P, then it will break that, and now they're back on the same thing. The other thing that I should also note is that if I select the parent, which is the helix, if I scale it, the child will scale. If I rotate it, the child will rotate with the parent. If I translate it, the child will move with it. Okay, so everything, all three systems are working in this physical parent. If I shift select, now they're equal again. And the other thing that you also might notice, or well, that you should know, is that if you're physically parenting, generally, if you're doing it in the viewport, you want to select the child first, then shift select the parent. So I select the child, then the parent, and then I can press P, and that will do the same thing as middle mouse clicking the child to the parent. Okay. So when you're parenting, the child is going to grab onto the parent. So you think of the child first, then the parent. The other way around it is that we could do a constraint. So constraining works the other way around. So either the way that you can remember is the last object that gets constrained is the object that is the last object that's selected is the one that gets constrained or gets the constraint node. Um, and so if you think about it, it's parent first, then the child. So it's the opposite of physical parenting. Um, I think of like if you have a child that's running nuts in a you know tea shop or glass shop, then you're gonna have the parent constraining the child and keep that child from breaking all the glass. So we're gonna select our parent first, then the child, and hold our space bar down and go to constraint. And then we're going to do a parent constraint. And when we do that parent constraint, you'll notice that this now highlights. In the previous one, in the physical parenting, this doesn't change. But in here, this will highlight. And what this blue highlight is showing is that the object is constrained to something, right? If you want to find out what it's constrained to, you have to go down into the inputs, and right here it will tell you it's constrained to the p helix one that I have here. The WO is basically the weight of that it's currently on, meaning that if I move, oh, the other thing too here is you can see that it's only affecting the translate and the rotate. So if I select my parent and I translate it, it works. If I rotate it, it works. But if I scale it, see what it does. So it doesn't affect the scaling. So another difference in constraining is that if you parent constrain something, oops, if you parent constrain something, I set that to 0 like I told you not to do. So let's just set that back to 1. Um, if you set it, if you constrain a parent, if you use a parent constraint, it's only going to affect the translate and rotate. If you also wanted to affect the scaling of this thing, then what you would have to do is again put a select the parent, shift select the child, hold your spacebar down, go to constrain, and then you can see that there is so there's parent, which does basically your point and orient. Those are these two. And then underneath that is scale. Click on scale. And now you can see that it is scale constrained. And now as I scale it, it'll scale up and down. You'll also notice that on the pyramid, there's a little plus next to the pyramid. See that plus next to the pyramid? Click on that plus, and then we can see that we have the pyramid parent constraint and the scale constraint. Maya is a node-based system, so if I don't want this thing to be parent constrained, all I have to do is or well, we'll say scale. If I don't want the scale constraint on there, I can select that and then hit delete. And now if I select my thing, it won't be scaled. So you can get rid of those constraints very easily. The other thing you can also do is shut them off. So if I have this rotated like that, and then I select my pyramid because that's the one that has the constraint on it, and I turn the constraint off, now you can see that it will just go back to not being affected, and then my rotation will have no effect on it. But if I click back on this and then I turn that back on, now you can see that it will be affected. So those are constraints. Constraints are an animator's friend. You should know those, and also a rigger's friend. So constraints and parenting are things that that you should be concerned with. I'm also going to do one more thing here. I'm going to constrain this again. I'm just going to do a parent constraint. So I'm going to select the parent, It's going to be constraining the child. So shift select the child. I'm going to hold my spacebar down, go to constraint, go to parent, but this time I'm going to go into the option box, and this is very important. In the option box for your options here, hopefully I'm going to go to my option box. If it didn't get, it's not on a different screen. Oh, let me pause this while I find my option box here. Okay, we are back. If you run into the problem that for me, my problem was that at work I have another monitor, and then when I hook up to it and I accidentally leave that second that you know tool over on that monitor, for some reason Maya remembers that and leaves it over on that window while I don't have that monitor with me. So the way that you can kind of reset Maya is on the PC. You can just go into the documents, Maya, the Maya version that you have, preferences, and then delete the user preferences. And then that will, the user preferences, I also deleted, there's a Windows preferences. I deleted that as well. It will remake them as needed. So then once you do that, now I can select my parent, shift select the child, hold my space bar down, go to constrain, go to parent option box. And the thing that we want to really look at here is the maintain offset. Thank you. So the maintain offset, what that will do is currently what we saw was that it will maintain where it is in space. It'll keep its position. If we click this off, each one of these has its own separate little pivot point on it. And so now what will happen is that when we constrain these, if I hit shift and then apply, now what happens is that gets stuck to the center of that object. Now, at some times, sometimes in your rigging career, you'll want things to be exactly at that same spot. Other times you'll want them to be separate. So that's how you can get those to be uh, contained or separated. Okay, so but for the most part, usually you want to do a constrain and then do a parent and then maintain offset. You can also, instead of hitting apply, you can save the settings and then that will keep your settings for the next time. So that's my quick little spiel um, on um, on whatever it is I just showed you on constraints. Um, so now the next thing that I want to show. Now this thing is not going to show. Mouse clicks, a keyboard. There we go. All right. Let's continue here. Okay. So what we are going to do, getting back into this, is that we are going to constrain this control, or we're going to constrain the ball using this control. So I want this ball, not, I want this control to be controlling that ball. So I'm going to select the control, and let's see, where am I in my instructions here? I'm going to shift select the ball, and all we need to do is we just need to constrain the orientation of this ball. I just want this control to affect the rotation. So I'm going to hold my spacebar down. I'm going to go to constrain and then my orient. And I'm going to click on that, and it's only going to affect the rotate Y there. So now if I select this and hit E for rotate, now you can see that that is going to rotate my ball. If I want this back to 0, I'll select that, hit 0, and now it is back to doing its thing. Okay, so we got that. For the master move, what I want that to do is I want this master move to move the ball around. Right now, if I hit W and I grab this thing, you can see that this is not moving, not moving anything. So what I wanted to do is move this ball. So I'm gonna select my my master move, shift select the ball, hold my spacebar down, do a constrain, and I'm going to do a point constraint on that. What that means is it's going to affect my translate. And if we look down here, if we just select the ball, you can see that we have an orient constraint that is it's affected by the control, and then we have our point constraint, which is affected by the master move. So now if I take the master move and move this around, then it's starting to go. Okay. Um, now that we have that, I am going to want to add a squash and stretch to this thing. Let's see, where am I? Make sure I'm not. Constraint ball. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we are going to constrain. Let's see, we are going to parent, rotate the control, master move. Straight ball, rotate control. Okay. So now what we want to do is we want to, if I move my master move, the ball goes with it, but our control, this rotate control, doesn't. So what I want this rotate control to do is I want that to be a child of this master move. So wherever we rotate or whenever we bring the ball with us, our rotate control will also go with us. This will also control the rotate, but if we want to have further refinement on this ball, we want to have that rotate. Okay. So I've parented those. I'm going to we're going to attach our sphere, select master move control. we've already controlled that. Okay. Then what we're going to do is we are going to add a squash and stretch. So I'm going to select my sphere. I'm going to select deform and then nonlinear. Nonlinear, and we're going to do a squash. Okay. And then what ends up happening is that it will create a little control on here. If I press 4, you can see it creates this little sphere or this little circle with a line in between it. It also adds this squash input to it. And the squash input, the top envelope, that tells whether it's working or not, whether it's on or off. Factor is going to be how much or how little it's going to squash or stretch. Expand tells whether it's going to expand or contract. So if I take expand, set that to 0, now it's just going to squash and stretch with no volume changing. So if you have expand on, don't want to set that, you just set it to 1. Now what it will do is it will keep the volume of our object and it'll be a little bit more gummy and squishy. You can also have this thing have the max extend position, and you can have the start and end smoothness. You can also have the low bounds and high bounds so that this is like the top part and the bottom part. If I set this to say 0 instead of -1, then when we squash it, it's only going to squash the top part of this. But we want to do the whole thing. So we'll just add -1 in there and it will squash the whole thing. Factor 0 that back out. Okay, so we have our squash here. Next thing we're going to do is that we are going to select our master move control, and we are going to add an attribute. So we want this thing to be we don't want to have to actually select the control and then do this. What we want to do is we want to add an attribute, a squash and stretch attribute onto this control so that we don't have to go into the squash and stretch control. Later on, we're going to actually hide that squash control, but for right now, we're just going to add a control for this. So we're going to go to selecting on the master move. We're going to go to edit. We're going to go to add attribute. And now it opens up this window. We're going to give this a name of squash. And then we're going to have a minimum of -10. So it's going to be able to go to the -10. So it's going to go squash. And then a maximum of 10, where it's going to stretch, and 10. And then the default is just going to be 0. Then we hit OK. So right now we have a squash attribute onto our master move. And if I click on squash and middle mouse click in my viewport, you can see that it's there, but nothing is happening. So what we need to do is add a set driven key, and that set driven key will allow us to squash and stretch it. It's going to basically, if you think of like a TV remote, right? You have a TV remote, you have the TV. When you push a button on the remote, it tells the TV to do something. That's what a set driven key does. You have a driver and you have a driven, and the one thing tells the other thing to do it, and you can tell it how much. So you could have a 1-for-1. So meaning that if I push a button, it will do the scale. Say like if I push a button, it'll scale it to 1. I can also push a button and tell it to scale to 2 instead of doing 1. So when I push the button, instead of scaling to 1, it'll scale to 2. So you can set how much or how little that scales it, right? Or whatever that button's going to do. You're basically programming this thing to give it the instructions on how much it's going to be doing. So what we're going to do is we're going to tell it that when it gets to -10, what that's going to do. And if we're saying squash, we're saying this is a squash. So if we're saying, if we squash this, we're increasing. So we're going to say that when we get to 10, it's going to be squashed. When we get to -10, it's going to be stretched. So I'm going to select squash. I'm going to right mouse click, and I am, let's see, not in there, but under edit, I'm going to go to set driven key. I click on that, and that's a set driven key. The other way that you can get to this is if you have the object selected and you hold your spacebar down and then go to, where's it here? It's under key, and then set driven key, and then set. And that will also open up this window. So 2 ways to get to it. And I'm not sure why that went there, but we'll get back to our regularly scheduled program here. Okay, so we're back at it. This window has our driver at the top. This is going to be whatever's in the top is going to then tell the attributes in the bottom to do the thing. Right now you can see that master move is in the bottom. And if that's what's going on, we're just going to select that master move and we're going to do load it as the driver. So now you can see the same thing is trying to drive itself, and that's not what we want to have happen. We're going to select our squash handle. It's also over there that you can select it. And we're going to load that as the driven. Now, I have that loaded as the driven, but the problem is that it's not going to actually drive that because that's the handle. We actually want to select squash. And we want to affect the factor. So if I select that and then load driven, that should give me my squash. There we go. Okay. So again, the way that I got into that, the way that I was able to load that is I selected my handle, went into the word squash, and I think you can even load driven from squash there. We'll do it. Select squash and then select factor. So we're going to tell squash factor that it's going to be driven. We're going to have master move and the attribute that's going to do the connecting. Now, in this, for this to work, we need to have all 4 of these highlighted in blue. We need the driver, the object, and then the attribute, and then the object, and then the attribute. All right. So with those selected, set driven key uses, just like in the name, it uses keys to tell it how much it's going to affect it. And I'll show you the graph editor where that does the changing. But what this is going to do is it's essentially going to set a key. And right now that key is going to be our squash is at 0. So we want the factor to also be at 0 because 0 is our default. So we're going to key right here. And when we key that, that is going to set the attribute on that squash. So if I select squash, you can see that factor now has a blue line on it. If I go into my animation here, you can also see that there's now a key right there. Hard to see, but there is a key. If I zoom in on it, there it is. There's my little key. So right now it is saying that when my master move is, when my master move squashes at 0, the squash handle factor is also at 0. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to now say, okay, well, if that's at 0, what happens if I change my squash handle to 10 or my master move to 10? And we had said that when we want to have this at 10, we want to have it at the most squash that we're going to do. So I'm going to select my squash handle, and you can do that by clicking on squash 1. And then you could take the factor and I'm just going to select on the word factor. Then in my viewport, I'm going to middle mouse click and drag. And what I want to do is just kind of put it to however big I want my squash to be. Now, I tend to give animators the most amount of control that they can have, but you don't want to have it exploding like this. So we're going to give it, we're going to say, all right, that's going to be our maximum kind of flatness. Animator might not use it, but better to have more and not use it than be limited. Okay. So once we have those two things set up, we have our, in fact, we'll just make it easy. We'll set this to -2. There we go. That's, yeah, that'll work. So we'll set that to -2. And so my master move is at 10 on the squash, and my squash handle is at -2. And then I'm going to key this. Okay. And then when I key that, you can see, or you should be able to see now, that down here we have created a key. One thing that I forgot to do, and I'm looking at my curves here, is that I forgot to set my, whenever you're doing set driven keys, you want to have the points linear. Okay, right now, what this is going to do is it's going to create an ease out and an ease in. So it's going to slowly go into the shape, and it's then going to, at the end, it's going to ease into that shape. And I don't want to have that in my set driven key. I want that to be, if I want to have that ease, I want to specifically animate that ease in and ease out. So to change that, I'm selecting my selecting my curves, and I'm just going to make those linear. I'm going to click on this line here, and now there's going to be a direct relationship as opposed to an ease in, ease out. Now, so I don't run into that problem again, I'm going to go into my attributes here. That's the little running guy, running person away from the little saw blade there. I'm going to go down to my animation. And in here, these are the tangents. So I don't want to have the auto and auto. I want to have linear and the bottom part linear. So I want my in tangent to be linear. I want the out tangent to be linear. And if I save that, now when I go into the rest of it, it should work just fine. So to get back into the rest of it, we're going to do our set driven key. I'm going to select on my master move. So at 10, our thing is squashed. When it's at -10, you can see it goes back to 0. That's because we haven't set how much it's going to stretch. So I'm going to go select on my squash. I'm going to go to my factor. I'm going to select on the word factor, and I'm going to middle mouse click on my viewport, and I'm just going to stretch this thing out. And we said -2 was for the other one. We'll just keep it the same. We'll just set that for 2. We can always change it later if we really want to. So I set it to 2. Now with the master move, squash at -10, the squash handle at 2, we're going to set this to key. And now you can see that we have another key over here. Now these keys aren't going to be affecting you otherwise, but it always uses this kind of center point as the change. So it created this key. Now I said we could change this if we wanted to. If we wanted to increase this, if we select that key, hit the shift and middle mouse click and drag up, you can see that we can make it bigger, or we could make it smaller if we don't want to have it stretch or squash that much. So we can set, we can determine what the maximum it can go to. Right now, I just want that to be 2. So I'm going to set it to 2 and hit enter. Why this didn't update, I don't know. Maybe we'll set it here. Select that one. We'll go to, oh, because I didn't set key, that's why. Yeah, I just tell this to go to 2, and now it's at 2. The other thing I could have done is once I change this to 2, then key that, and that would also change it. So if I select squash, now what should happen is I can select the word squash, middle mouse click in here, and I'll have this thing go squash and stretch. And now my attribute is right here. I don't have to select my squash handle anymore. I can hide that. We can also get rid of this set driven key window. We don't need that anymore. Okay, then what I want to do is this is all well and good, but if I have my if I have my squash here, let's set my squash to -10. If I move my control now and hit W, look what's happening. So deformers are really cool because you can move your geometry through them and they will be affected by that object. Okay. But what we don't want to do is we don't want to have that we don't want to have that being affected like that. We want to have this thing move around, or we want this handle to move with um, our object. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select my master control. I'm going to shift select the squash handle. If you're selecting it in here, it needs to be a control select. So you could either select it in the window by using shift select or control select in the outliner. I'm going to hold my spacebar down, do a constrain, and do a parent, because that is going to affect my it's going to affect the position and the rotation. So now if I squash this thing, or stretch it. Now remember when I told you that the points were going to show us where our object is stretching? When we have our ball bouncing, this is going to be that that effect, right? This is going to help us stretch the ball out, make it go to 0, and then stretch it back down again. And we're going to know which angle that this thing is going to be pointing in because we have points on our control. So I can set that to 0. I can set the control to 0, and now it's all back and set up to 0. Now I want to lock down my controls. So I have my ball bouncing and moving, and I just want to make sure that the animator, they have a great job of breaking rigs. I'm an animator by trade, so that's what I love doing, is getting in there and seeing how the rig can break. And so as a rigging, when I put my rigging hat on, I want to think about locking things down so they don't get broken and end up ruining an animation later on down the road. So we're going to lock things and hide them. So I'm going to select my master move control. I'm going to select the words rotate Z, and I'm going to hold shift and do rotate Y. And I'm going to right mouse click and I'm going to lock and hide selected. So lock and hide selected. Now, if you made a mistake and you are like, oh no, I want to get those things back. How do I get those back? No worries. Just go into channels. Nope, sorry. Go into edit, and then you have your channel control. And this will be the place that you can get those back. So we have a locked tab. So this is where the things were locked. Remember, we locked and hid them. So if we unlock those, right now they're under the locked column, we can move those into the non-locked. So right now they're unlocked. We still can't see them. So we have to go into the non-keyable hidden because they're still hidden. So we scroll down, find our rotate Y and Z, and then we can move those back into the keyable section. And now they're back. Okay. And they're also not locked. So that's how you can get them back. But we are going to hide them. So I'm clicking and hiding, locking and hiding selection. Lock and hide selected. So those are gone. Now we can't accidentally set keys. We can't accidentally use those because I don't want this thing to start rotating. I don't want them to rotate this way. I also don't want them to rotate in this forward backward motion. Okay, so I don't want it to twist. and I don't want it to rotate the other way. This is strictly just to get lateral Y and X movement. Okay, just across the screen. All right, so then we are going to select the words scale X, Y, and Z. So I have my master move and we have scale X, Y, and Z. We aren't going to do any scaling with this. We're just going to lock and hide selected, right mouse click, lock and hide selected. So those are gone. We're going to select the word translate X. So translate X right now. Yeah, that's, I don't want it to be able to go, into or out of that movement here. So we're going to click on translate X and we're going to lock and hide selected, lock and hide selected. And then we are going to select the words let's see, what do we have here? We're going to select our translate X. Words. Those are already gone. We're going to select the sphere. And we're going to select the words rotate Y and Z. We're going to lock and hide selected. We're also going to put the ball in a display layer. So I'm going to select that ball, and display layers, what they do is they can help organize things and also help things to keep from getting selected. So I'm going to select that ball. I'm going to click on this little blue ball with the paper at the end, and we have a new layer. So I'm going to double click on that layer, and I'm going to rename this layer, and I'm going to call it ball. And I always put a LYR in capitals there. So ball, LYR. Actually going to put a space there. And an LYR, you can't name things the same thing when they're in a Maya file. So I don't want to name thing ball. And LYR just is short so that I know that it's a layer. So when I'm looking to edit things, I know that this is just a layer. I'm going to turn this to display type as reference, meaning that I won't be able to select it. There's different types. There's template, and there's reference. And reference allows me to have it in the scene, but not selected. So with that layer, you can see that there's an R. If I have nothing selected, I can select the ball in the viewport. If I change this to T, that's the template, you can see that it turns to this gray thing that I can't select. It's like a wireframe. And then if I press it again, it's R. And you might also be able to notice that the color here is black with those lines. Here it's like a light blue. It's a small change, but that shows that it's in the scene, but I can't select it. It's a referenced. Um, so that just helps me to be able to not select it and make it easy to do. All right. The other thing that we can also do is we can turn this on and off, and that will, if we wanted to see the geometry of the ball, we could see it or not. This P, if we have that on when we hit play here, it will show. If we hit P and turn that off and hit play, it will hide itself from the play, which can be very helpful when you are animating. Okay, so we have our layers. We're going to select the rotate control. We're going to select the words translate X, Y, and Z. We don't want this thing to translate. It's just a rotational tool. So we're going to lock and hide selected. We're going to select the words rotate Z and Y because I don't want this. I don't want this rotating forward. I also don't want it twisting this way. So we're going to right mouse click and lock and hide selected. So those are gone. We are going to select the scale. We're going to select the scale of this thing. We don't need uh, this thing to be scaled, so we'll lock and hide selected. Okay, and then we're going to select lastly here the squash handle. So I'm going to select that squash handle, and I'm just going to turn the visibility off. So we can turn the visibility on and hit 0 and hit enter, and now it is invisible. So we can just shut that off. We don't need to do anything more than that. We can also take the visibility if we wanted to. Really, we could lock it down. Well, we could lock this down. We could right mouse click and do lock selected. So we could still turn it on and off if we wanted to for whatever reason, but um, right now it's just hidden, so we can't really select it in the viewport. You can select it over here. Um, and that's why when I'm animating, I usually set things up for the viewport rather than the outliner. Um, if you can't select it in the viewport, then it probably needs to be like reworked so that you can select it easily. The problem with the outliner is it shows everything, and so sometimes you'll select things by mistake and add keys to them. You don't want to add keys to your stuff. So I highly recommend when you go into animating, don't animate from the outliner. Select the objects in the viewport. That's generally the accepted way of selecting controls. Okay, so right now we have our controls. They're all set up, but we want to differentiate them. Right now they're looking kind of bland. So we want to add some color to it so we can visually see how these things are looking. I'm going to select my master control, see how nice that looks with some color on it. So to change the color on this, I'm going to select the master move. I'm going to go into my attributes. So if you don't see the attribute thing in here, you can go to your general and that will change this. Now you can see the attributes. If you also don't want to go to general, you can select, there's a button under here for your attributes to hide and select them. So you just click on that and that will hide or show your attributes. All right. So we have that set. We want to go down to object display. My Maya is being a little slow. And then we want to, so we have object display. Then we're going to go to drawing overrides. And we're going to enable overrides. And then we're going to pick a color. So you could do index color or RGB. If you pick RGB, then you can click on this and it'll bring up the window that you want to move. And you can pick the color that you want. I'm going to pick yellow for the outside. So now when I deselect this, this is yellow. We can do the same thing for the inner one, enable overrides. Nice how it kept all the attribute selection here. Change this to RGB, click on that, and I'm going to make this be red. There we go. So now we can easily see, which one we are selecting on. All right, so now what we want to do is we also want to clean up our outliner. Right now, everything is kind of uh kind of haphazard, or it's all just, not connected under one. We generally want to have it under one kind of object or one character. So I'm going to select my master move. and I'm going to do a Control G. That's going to group everything to itself. You can see that it's group one, and all of my stuff is grouped underneath here. So I'm going to rename that group. I'm going to call it Controls C on GROS GRP. Again, same thing that I'm doing for the layer. I'm doing the same thing for controls group. So Controls GRP. So that's a controls group. I'm now going to select the ball, and I'm going to rename this thing. I'm going to group it to itself, Control G. I'm going to rename this group. So now we're going to double click on that, and we're going to call this geometry, GRP, geometry group. And we are going to select both the controls group, and I'm going to hold control and select the controls group so we don't select everything in between. If you select everything in between, then you will end up ungrouping things. So we just want to make sure that those two are blue. And then we're going to do a Control G. And we're going to call this, we're going to double click on that and call this ball rig. Ball rig. Then we're going to select our squash handle. We're going to group that to itself and put that in a group called Do Not Touch. GRP. Do Not Touch group. And we're going to middle mouse click that and drop that onto our ball rig. So now if I hold shift, left mouse click, and then select this and do that. Now what we have is we have our ball rig. That's the overall rig of the group. Then we have our geometry group. Underneath our geometry, we have all of our geometry in here. These two are just constraints, so those are attached to our geometry. Under that, we have our controls group, and in that controls group, we have just the controls, and then we have our do not touch stuff, which is is in the squash handle. So this is generally how we want things organized, is that we want to have our overall arching name of the rig that we have. We have our geometry group, so we keep the geometry separate from our controls, separate from other things like joints and stuff like that. So this is a nice organized way of putting all of this together. Okay. Now what we want to do is do the final touch is to put this in a group. We are going to do an animation of a ball bounce. And so what I want to do is I want to save this, but I also want to create a project for the next part of doing the animation on this. So I'm going to do a file. I'm going to go to where am I at? Looking for the project window. It's going to open up this project window. Here is the current project. We're going to make a new project. And I'm going to save this right now. The location is in projects here. I am going to go to my, where am I going to save it? I'll just save it under, let's see. We'll just do it to, let's see, we'll save it in documents here. So in documents, I'll just make a new, actually I have yeah, we'll just make a new file, a new folder. And we'll call this ball bounce. And I'm going to hit enter. And then I'm going to select this as the new place that this is going to reside. So actually, Actually, I'm gonna back out of this. I'm gonna go to my desktop here. I'm gonna go back to my documents. Sorry about this. Go back into my ball. I'm gonna delete that. Right mouse click, and then I'll just rename this because this is I don't want to have this. I'll just call it delete. So I just kind of get rid of that. So we're gonna save it in the location of documents. Okay. The project name, the current project is going to be ball bounce. So now what it'll do is it'll create the folder ball bounce in the documents folder under delete. There we go. And I'm going to hit accept. And then what it's going to do is when I hit accept, it's going to create all of these scenes here. So all of these folders. So I click on accept. Now if I open up my window and go to my drive here, go down to the desktop, not desktop, but my documents, go down to ball bounce, and in there are these folders. Now we're gonna save our thing in scenes here. So if I go back to my window, I'm gonna go to file, go to save scene as, and now you can see that it puts me into the right folder already. I'm gonna call this ball rig, ball rig, and underscore 01, and then underscore MJR. Okay. And you can store it as a binary or ASCII. I'm going to save it as an ASCII file and then do save as. So now this is set up to animate. Now, you don't want to animate on the rig in my animation, in the animation video that I'll make. I'll show you how to get your rig into the scene for animating, and that is all. Oh, actually, let's do one more thing. The one last thing that I want to do is I want to give this some texture. So if I shut this off, we won't have any texture on there. So I'm going to go back to my channel. Going to turn off the reference for the ball bounce. I'm going to select that ball. I'm going to right mouse click and go to go down to assign new material. That new material is going to be we'll just do it as a Lambert. It's fine. And in there, we're going to go to our attributes. And then at the end of our attributes should be a Lambert 2. And we're going to click on color. Sorry, not color. The little checkerboard box there. And then we're going to click on checker. Now we don't see the checker. We have to press 6, and then we should be able to see the checkered ball. There we go. That's what I want to do. Now, I say never save over a working rig, so we're not going to do that. We're going to do a file, save scene as. We're going to save this not as ball rig 1, but we're going to save it as ball rig 2. And save scene as, and there we go. Now we're up to ball rig 2. And that is all. Let me know if you have any questions or comments.